This is Leo Gold, a commander of the Northwest Secessionist Forces in Deus Ex. For many, he was one of the first characters to show just how political the game really is. Deus Ex came out in the year 2000, but now when people talk about politics in video games, they think about social war issues. Deus Ex touches on subjects like government and corporate power, surveillance, taxation, actual political policy. In my opinion, Deus Ex is still the most political video game ever made. That being said, it's still fictional, and it takes place in a future that diverges from our own timeline. But a lot of its ideas are rooted in real historical trends, so I wanted to go through some of what Leo Gold says, and look at the real-world numbers behind it.
For 100 years, there's been a conspiracy of plutocrats against ordinary people.
The plutocratic conspiracy is a popular theory. Don't get me wrong, I'm well aware of recent revelations of powerful people who've congregated for years to conspire in doing very reprehensible things. The idea that it's been a singular and constant group that's lasted for hundreds of years remains skeptical. The more likely explanation remains that rich and powerful people tend to think alike and end up with similar political goals. Great wealth allows them to basically purchase power, eroding a democratic system. Let's not forget the Princeton University study that concluded that despite what it titles itself, the United States of America more closely functions as a plutocracy.
Number 1. In 1945, corporations paid 50% of federal taxes. Now they pay about 5%.
In 1945, corporations actually paid a top federal tax rate of 40%. That peaked at 52.8% in 1968 and 1969. Since then, the tax rate has trended downwards, reaching a bottom of 21%, where it remains today. Deus Ex takes place in the year 2052. Considering the trend, you can perhaps argue that the federal corporate tax rate could continue to decline and actually reach 5% by then. But you can also suggest that Leo Gold is actually referring to the effective corporate tax rate. You see, there's a difference between what corporations are said to pay on paper and what they actually pay in taxes. Deductions, credits, depreciation rules, international accounting. There's a whole buffet of loopholes that they can take advantage of, to the point where corporations can avoid paying any federal income taxes at all. The individual tax rate shares a similar story. The top marginal tax rate for a single payer peaked at 94% in 1944 and 1945. After the war, the trend was also one of decline, reaching a bottom of 31%. It sits at 37% today for all income over $626,351 of realized income, because there's loopholes there too.
Number 2. In 1900, 90% of Americans were self-employed. Now it's about 2%.
Things got a bit complicated here during my research. However, the bottom line is this. The Bureau of Labor Statistics began keeping modern records on self-employment rates in 1948. I wasn't able to find any reliable data on what it was in 1900, but most economic historians estimate it was somewhere between 50 and 65% due to the high number of farmers. So it is true that the self-employment rate has significantly declined and continued to decline ever since. By 1948, it was already estimated at 17%, and by 2024, it was estimated at 10%. Now, the reason it got complicated and why Leo Gold's estimation of 2% by 2052 might still be accurate is due to how the Bureau of Labor Statistics defines self-employment. They have two categories: unincorporated and incorporated self-employment. Simply put, incorporated are individuals who own a business and work as an employee of their own business. Incorporated are the gig workers, aka the independent contractors. These are your Uber drivers, for example. What's curious is that the rate of unincorporated self-employment did not reverse the decline according to the BLS numbers. It only slowed it down. A good reason for this is due to how people answer the BLS surveys. Uber drivers tend to say that they work for Uber. They don't call themselves independent contractors, and so they end up being misclassified and underestimated. By 2052, the amount of people who are actually self-employed could reach lows of 2%, while the people who are technically self-employed but in the service of a corporation would be much higher. After all, it's a well-known fact that when it comes to the gig economy and independent contractors, it's the quote-unquote employers who are in the advantageous position. Corporations are able to receive the services of an employee without having to provide the benefits that an actual employee would be entitled to. And this was not an accident. It connects back to that study from Princeton that I cited earlier. This is the result of policy choices. such as the misclassification of workers as independent contractors, enabled by lax enforcement of labor laws, the weakening of collective bargaining, and the erosion of the social safety net. It reflects a broader political economy in which the economic elites have structured labor markets to concentrate risk on the workers while concentrating rewards on corporations.
It's called consolidation. Strengthen governments and corporations, weaken individuals. With taxes, this can be done imperceptibly over time.
The incorporated self-employed aren't doing any better either. We're given an example of someone who owns and operates their own business in the form of Gilbert Renton of the Tawn Hotel. Even before the NSF situation, this was a man trying to keep a small business alive in a collapsing local economy. The sign in the elevator is broken, the rooms are run down, and his clientele mirrors that. Who else could he attract when the mega corporations control all the large hotel chains and are able to absorb losses? Leo Gold isn't just talking about abstract consolidation. The Rentons serve as a human face for Gold's speech. It's a showcase of what happens to the little guy when the market gets more and more concentrated. The Tawn Hotel is a miniature version of the problem Leo Gold talks about. The sense that ordinary people are being pushed into a system where the strongest players keep getting bigger and everyone else has to fight just to stay alive. And with a government that's being strengthened by the corporations, they have no incentive to do anything about it. All done via taxes and in a way where the majority of the public remains completely unaware. And how do you do that? How do you shift an entire tax system to benefit the wealthy without anyone noticing? Well, it turns out there's a playbook, and it only takes 4 steps. Step 1. Wealthy elites engage in what's known as stealth politics. They don't go on TV to make their case and have an open debate about it. Instead, they have direct access to the politicians, allowing them to shape tax bills in private. Step 2. Media facilitation. When a new corporate tax break is proposed, the news usually interviews CEOs, lobbyists, and friendly politicians, the very people who were engaging in the aforementioned stealth politics. Everything gets framed around what's good for business, not regular people, whom studies show have always wanted wealthy and corporations to pay more. But they will never tell you that because of step number 3, media capture. With the rise of independent news sources, many have heard of this one. The wealthy can buy more ads, they can threaten to pull sponsorships, or they can outright buy the entire media outlet. That's when you start hearing what they want you to hear and stop hearing what they don't want you to hear. And on more than just taxes.
Meaning does not exist a priori. It is order imposed by individuals with arsenals of communication devices.
Step 4. Policy misperceptions. After all the previous steps, it's no surprise that you end up with a population of people who are either ignorant of the situation, are completely misinformed, and in the worst case scenario, actively argue in favor of policies that go against their own interests.
No revolutionaries? You must not mind martial law.
The only way to maintain order.
Don't you miss using the metro?
A small inconvenience. The city must be kept safe for those of us who are working and trying to pull the country out of this depression.
What if I told you that the depression was caused by a cabal of wealthy businessmen who want to rule the world?
These stories, I hear them every day. Always from someone who wants to blame other people for his bad luck.
All done with little to no democratic input or accountability.
Ever wonder why big car companies pay 2% tax while the guys on the assembly line pay 40%?
That line pretty much encapsulates everything discussed about taxes, consolidation, and labor in one sentence. It's a bit contradictory though. Earlier he said the corporations pay 5% federal taxes, and now he's saying it's 2%. But perhaps it has to do with the tax law surrounding the specific industry. I mentioned before how corporations have access to taxation loopholes that allow them to pay a far less effective tax rate. Gold's statement of workers paying 40% of their income in taxes might be true in 2052, but like I showed previously, the federal tax rate caps out at 37% when in the highest bracket. But of course, workers pay federal income tax, payroll tax, and often state and local taxes depending on where they live. So altogether, some reports still suggest that about 1/3 of your average worker's income could be going towards the tax burden. The exact amount varies depending on income level, state taxes, and filing status. But Gold is touching on something real. As a percentage, corporations pay far less in taxes than the workers they employ.
Corporations are so big you don't even know who you're working for. That's terror. terror built into the system.
As an NSF commander, Leo Gold is classified as a terrorist by the government. My first video on Deus Ex went deep into analyzing the use of fear to manipulate the masses, and that video was ultimately demonetized. So I can't say too much of what I really want to say. But consider that Gold isn't just talking about literal violence. In both Deus Ex and in reality, one company could just be a subsidiary of a different company that's actually controlled by this other company that holds majority stocks, which itself is a subsidiary of another company that might just be something acquired by some hedge fund, and so on and so on. The first aspect of this system that's concerning is how hiring, layoffs, pay, and investment choices can all be driven by people who are far removed from the actual workplace, and yet they're the ones making big decisions about it. But the other aspect of this system is far more concerning. The long chain of ownership can effectively keep the real owners hidden. I have to bite my tongue on this one, so I'll just say that workers can be embedded in supply chains or ownership structures that ultimately connect them to causes they would strongly oppose. You do not vote for these people. You have no control over them. And they purchase influence with the people who do. In the world of Deus Ex, the companies are ultimately owned either by the Illuminati or Majestic 12, the latter of which engineered and deployed a man-made virus and possesses the only treatment. So in the Deus Ex universe, your average worker is probably working for an organization that is actively killing them and the people they know. That is indeed terror built into the system.
The entire executive branch is handpicked. 19 of the last 23 U.S. presidents have been members of the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is financed by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Don't tell me.
That's a think tank. Anyone can become a member.
But not everyone does. That's why they call it the secret government.
The Trilateral Commission is, in fact, a real thing, and it really was founded in 1973 by American banker David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski, not by the Rothschilds. Its stated goal was to create a forum of high-level discussion among private citizens from the world's three main democratic and industrialized regions: North America, Western Europe, and the Asia-Pacific region. J.C. Denton is incorrect when he says that anyone can become a member. In reality, membership is by invitation only, not open to the general public. The commission is to gather the world's most influential people from businesses, politics, academia, and the media to discuss global issues informally. Membership is actively curated because it aims to connect former and future leaders, but not current ones, because they have a rule that stipulates members must give up their commission membership when they are appointed to an official government position. So far, 4 US presidents have been members: Jimmy Carter, George Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, and George Bush Jr. That may sound like a low number until you consider how many members get appointed to office instead of elected. There have been more commission members who ran for president but lost. Many more are appointed to positions even when the president who was elected was not a member. Certain names that stand out include Secretary of the Treasury, Michael Blumenthal, Carter administration; National Security Advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Carter administration; Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, Nixon and Ford administration; Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney, Bush Sr., Chair of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, Reagan, Bush Sr., Clinton, and Bush Jr. The Trilateral Commission is not a direct secret government, but admittedly it's pretty close. For politicians, it's essentially a way to network with powerful people, to learn from them, build relationships, and gain credibility in anticipation to campaign for major political office. No matter which political party wins in the end, the pool of candidates for top appointed positions is heavily drawn from the commission and other networks like it. This ensures that whatever policies they agree to pursue continues, regardless of who's in office. So it's not a case of it being a group of conspirators that pick and choose who becomes the next president. In reality, it's arguably even more oligarchic than it's presented in Deus Ex. It is a powerful, private organization that helps shape the personnel and ideas that dominate US foreign and economic policy. no matter which party controls the White House. I'll be honest, when I first started researching this, I thought this video was just going to be me giving the real numbers behind what Leo Gold was giving us. For some reason, I didn't think I'd end up here. Instead, I just reconfirmed my opinion that Deus Ex is the single most political game ever made. So far when it comes to Deus Ex, I've had one video demonetized and another video earned me a community guideline strike. I really hope I don't get in trouble for this one. But despite all that, I have my channel members to help me to convince me to keep going, so a big thank you goes out to them. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, have a good one.